There. 6.6 is just talking about factoring and a general strategy. We're not learning anything new in 6.6, it's just reviewing all the different ways of factoring. So the first thing you always want to do whenever you have to factor something is look for a greatest common factor. That's going to be step one in every single expression that you're faced with. And it just says under here, if there is a greatest common factor, you should factor it out of the expression first, like you see in the example below. Also keep in mind that whenever you have a leading term that is negative, you want to make sure you factor out that negative. The next thing you want to do is count the number of terms that your expression has. So count the number of terms. Depending on how many terms there are, will tell you which approach you need to use. If there are two terms, then it's either going to be difference of squares, sum or difference of cubes. There is no sum of squares. So keep it in mind, if it's something squared plus something squared, it's prime. So two terms, it's either difference of squares or sum and differences of cubes. If there are three terms, meaning that if you have a trinomial, it's either going to have a leading coefficient of a positive one or a leading coefficient that is not one. In the end, whenever you have a trinomial, they will factor to two binomials. There's also the idea here of the perfect square trinomials. The perfect square trinomials that have different properties as well. So you want to make sure you go back and look at the perfect square. They will fall into one of these two categories, but it just makes it easier to factor if you can recognize it. And lastly, when you count the terms, if you have four terms, you want to factor by grouping. And then make sure you always factor completely, because sometimes when we factor by grouping, one or the other will continue to factor more. So those are, if you're getting stuck with your factoring problems, go back and look at this. You cannot use it on the test, but it helps you through your homework and studying. See if you can take out a GCF. Sometimes if you can take out a GCF, it changes everything and it makes the problem a lot easier. If you have two terms, it's either difference of squares or sum and difference of cubes. Three terms is a trinomial, so it factors to two binomials. Four terms, factor by grouping. Okay, this is really all we have for 6.6. I just wanted to kind of talk through what we have here in your notes and reach out with any questions.